stops now and we can get back underway.
Jack, thanks for your time. Good luck.
Mate, thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Jack Miller, yeah, echoing the sentiments of all of us here in Indonesia. We do hope that we can get underway. If you are just tuning in, we have a delayed start. Fabio Quartararo is not obviously expecting any action soon. He's got back in his team clothing. Oh, dearie me. Terrible mistake. Was that his ice cream? Oh dear, that's the first mistake Fabio Quartararo has made all weekend so far. That's a little bit of a red-faced moment for our pole man and our reigning world champion. Now, this lady is doing some sterling work now. She's been out on the grid. She is trying to banish away this rain. We sincerely hope it does work, as Fabio Quartararo makes his first mistake of the weekend, dropping his ice cream tub. Let's hope it's the only mistake he makes of the weekend as well. Nothing that the riders and the teams can do, of course. All they can do is wait patiently and hope that we do get a break in this torrential rain. Pre-race, it was looking very, very good for Ducati. They had 2 bikes on the front row. 4 bikes that qualified in the top 6, including round 1 winner, Enea Bastianini. We've already heard the thoughts of the Ducati Lenovo rider, Jack Miller. Let's pop back down to Simon, who's got sporting director Paolo Ciabatti with him. Down to you guys.
Yeah, I was just saying to Paolo, we've been talking a lot about conditions and that already. What I would love to hear from Paolo's point of view is your 8 very impressive Ducati riders, you know, some rookies, some very experienced. I'd love to hear your thoughts on each of them if you have time.
Yeah, sure. I think we have plenty of time. Let's hope the rain stops pretty soon and we can have a race today, because so many spectators and the president of Indonesia is here. So we must have a race, I think. What can I say? I think we were impressed positively by all the riders, obviously starting from Enea. You know, he did a fantastic job in Qatar, riding impressively. It's his second season in MotoGP, but for sure to be able to qualify good and then to be so strong in the race and make no mistakes was amazing. Unfortunately, if we talk about Pecco and Jack, obviously Pecco had that crash. You know that we were trying a few things during the weekend, so probably our riders lost a little bit of confidence, so they couldn't really feel comfortable on the bike. And from Jack's side, unfortunately, he had an electronic problem, so our fault. Here, I think we saw that we had 7 riders in the top 12, and the 13th rider is another Ducati, Bezzecchi. So, I mean, all of them super fast. If we go back to Bezzecchi and Marini, I think they showed here that they can do very good, especially Marco is impressive here. I think Luca was very good during the test, but also for him, being on a 22 bike, he lost a little bit of confidence in Qatar, but he's getting it back here. And also for Di Giannantonio, wow, Q2. So Fabio is also a rookie, which is doing very good. And obviously the Martin Zarco, we don't have to say much because they have been so strong all over last year, and they continue to be very, very strong here, starting from the first row. So I think we will have a wet race. I think it's probably in a way better for us, because if they do a shortened race, 20 laps with Fabio Quartararo, I think it would be very difficult if he can get a good start, because he had an impressive pace on dry conditions. This conditioner, I think, will help us a little bit more. And then we see, obviously, rainy condition, always a kind of risk and gamble. But all our riders are very comfortable in these conditions. So looking forward to the race.
Paolo, through testing, winter testing, it looked like you had found a faster engine, and Ducati never stopped developing. We see that. It looked also that the riders lost a bit of confidence, as you said. I can imagine soon that bike will be better than the 21 bike, but have you found the direction now, do you believe?
Yes, as you know, there are 3 different options of Ducati engines available this year. There is a 21 version, which is what the Gresini riders and Matt Bezzecchi have. Then there is what we call hybrid version of 2022 with some features of a 21, and this is for the 2 factory riders. As spectators may know, the factory riders, you can choose one engine for both riders. On the independent team, you can use also different specs for different riders. But Jack and Pecco have this hybrid version, and then we have the 2 Pramac riders and Marini on the 22. I think the 22 showed here that is as good as. Hopefully there is some room for improvement, but I think the main problem was because we were trying a system that was probably not yet mature, as you can say, to be used in the race. So once the riders, we decided kind of to go back to something more standard. In Qatar, riders had lost a little bit of confidence. So I think here we went back to a more normal setup, and the results prove that this is the right direction. So we have time during the season to bring into the race something new.
Paolo, last question for you. In the future, I'm thinking if that engine is faster, the 22 engine, and we get to somewhere like Austria and you've had time to develop it, do you expect it to start to shine there?
As you know, once you make the choice, it's made for the whole season, no? So we have to stay with the selection that has been made. And obviously, we think, honestly, to be totally transparent, it's so difficult to improve an engine like the engine we were using last year, because it already reached a very high level of performances. So obviously, engineers always try to do a little bit better, but sometimes the difference is really small. So it goes back to the feeling of the rider on that engine more than on the actual performance.
Paolo, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks to Ducati Lenovo team manager Paolo Ciabatti with Simon Crafar. We just saw there is the president of Indonesia. That's how big this event is for the nation of Indonesia. Mr. Joko Widodo present, hopefully to see some Premier Class race action here. The local announcers are doing their best to keep the fans entertained. We've just heard them there, I think, just singing the national anthem. Of course, this was a man who rode with 20 riders on that special parade in Jakarta, which Lewis attended. Gave us a real insight and a real flavour into just how popular MotoGP is in this part of the world. It's great to have Mr. Widodo here present for what we hope is going to be a landmark and milestone day for Indonesian motorsport. A landmark day, of course, for MotoGP as well. We've talked about how Spain is kind of the European heartbeat of the championship. I think very much the rest of the world heartbeat for MotoGP is very much in this Southeast Asian nation. They love their motorcycle racing. Marc Marquez flags waving. Unfortunately, when we do get underway here in Lombok, we will not see Marquez in action. Got to say, they're doing a pretty good job of keeping up their spirits, Lewis, here, because we've had a pretty lengthy delay. We should have been underway in MotoGP nearly half an hour ago now, but the crowd are still enjoying their day out.
Yeah, I guess they'll say if we've had to wait 25 years for Grand Prix motorcycle racing in the Premier Class to return to this country, what's another couple of hours? Pol Espargaro starting. Well, when we got on the plane to fly out here to Indonesia, we certainly didn't expect Pol Espargaro to be lining up 16th on the grid for this Grand Prix. Of course, the changes to the tyres, Michelin bringing this stiffer construction of tyre, the different casing to deal with the heat that we were expecting here in dry conditions, has certainly caught Repsol Honda out. Pol Espargaro was fastest on 2 of the 3 days at the pre-season test here back in February. Really, really competitive in just about every condition on all days, but Espargaro, once we arrived here in Indonesia, hasn't been able to enjoy the same kind of feeling at this Grand Prix and was rather critical of Michelin. Of course, Michelin having to make a decision based on the 3 days of data that they had at the test, and decided that they had to bring this different casing of the rear tyre. They were fearful of the heat and of blisters causing them some real problems. We had track temperatures mid-60s centigrade on Thursday here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit, so you can understand why Michelin were a little bit concerned and a little bit cautious. But Pol Espargaro was saying that their bike simply wasn't made for tyres like the ones that we have here that haven't been run since Buriram in 2018, and it simply caught Repsol Honda out.
Yeah, just a little update from some of our Indonesian colleagues who've been messaging a media WhatsApp group that the MotoGP media keep involved in, and apparently that lady who we saw on the grid was what they call in these parts of the world a rain handler. It's a term for people in Indonesian society who are believed to be able to control the rain or the weather. Generally, rain handlers control the weather by moving clouds. They a service they usually use for big events such as weddings, musics and concerts. Well, let's hope the rain handlers manage to handle this weather. That's a great embrace between two men who've done so much together to bring this sport that we love to a country that loves our sport, MotoGP. Dorna CEO, of course, Carmelo Espeleta, embracing and having a conversation here with Mr. Joko Widodo, the President of the Republic of Indonesia. These two men, of course, have worked tirelessly behind the scenes for weeks, months and years to bring MotoGP back to Indonesia. There were two Indonesian Grand Prix at the Central Circuit near Jakarta back in 1996 and 1997. Popularity of MotoGP in Southeast Asia has ballooned and rocketed over the last 20 years or so. I remember going to Malaysia and Sepang when Sepang was first built back in 1999. They struggled to get 10,000 fans through the gate. Now you can get 150,000 fans coming to Sepang. It's always great to have international races, to bring the sport to new audiences, to bring the sport to where they love MotoGP. Of course, we race in Thailand, we race in Malaysia, we race in Japan, in this part of the world, and we're hoping that we get to race in Indonesia in 2022 as well. Stick with us, be patient.
It's been one of the regrets, hasn't it, amongst many of the last 2 or 3 years, of course, with COVID-19. Of course, our hearts go out to everyone who's been affected over the course of this pandemic, but of course it's prevented MotoGP to coming to places like Sepang, and of course we're waiting later in the year to go to Motegi and to Buriram, as well as you mentioned, and Phillip Island. Very, very popular venues with very, very passionate support, where we're hoping to be able to return to later in the year.
Has Fabio Quartararo stolen your flip-flops there, Lewis?
It's the right size feet, I have to say.
He does like the old rascal clobber.
Yeah, although I think given the size of my feet, my shoes more resemble canoes, which will be quite useful actually in conditions such as these. So yeah. I think I'd be well set.
Get your flippers and your snorkel out. I think that's what you need.
Well, here's an onboard lap with the difference then of the Pertamina Mandalika circuit. You're inside the safety car heading into turn 1. You can see on screen the standing water still on the circuit. It's difficult to really tell from this camera angle whether the conditions are easing or not. Just popped out of the commentary box around 10 minutes ago and the rain was still falling very heavily indeed. Of course, they're trying to clear some of the water, do whatever they can, of course, so that once conditions, if they do improve to the stage where we can go racing, the track conditions don't take too long to sweep up and clear some of that standing water away. So they're really working round the clock here to keep the track in as good a condition as possible. So once we do get notice that a race start could be possible, that quick restart procedure, that 15-minute start procedure, can be commenced.
Yeah, I'm trying to remain optimistic, Lewis, as we always do in the commentary box here in MotoGP, but all those hills that we can see off in the distance around this magnificent Mandalika circuit at the moment, you can't see them, such is the heavy cloud cover. The local authorities and the local organisation, as we said, they're doing their best to keep the fans entertained in the grandstands. This is Franco Uncini and Loris Capirossi.
Yeah, we've spoken about the passionate support that they have for MotoGP in this part of the world. They also take it as a great source of pride as well for MotoGP to be visiting this part of the world. We mentioned earlier on, the welcome from the locals here has been absolutely second to none. They really have embraced the arrival of MotoGP in this part of the world. You can see the excitement on your screens there. They really do live for this stuff.
Yeah, I never thought I'd come to a MotoGP race in Indonesia on a stunning island like Lombok and go out for dinner the first night like we did as a big group, Lewis, to a Mexican restaurant where I was being talked in a Cockney slang by one of the waiters. His Cockney was better than mine, to be honest. Top man. As you say, we've had such a fantastic reception here in Indonesia. It's a long, long wait that we've had to endure before the World Championship came here 25 years ago. That's such a long time ago. That was my second season in the paddock, 1997. Blimey, I was a whippersnapper back then, 24 years of age. I feel like a proper old man now.
So I wonder what the debrief will be then as they return to the pit lane. Of course, we're expecting perhaps the next update very, very shortly.
Well, it's a bad sign, isn't it? You can just see the pace of those windscreen wipers on the BMW safety car. That gives you an indication of just how strong the rainfall is still falling. Franco Ancini and Loris Capirossi, they've done a fair few laps out there already, haven't they? So there's a further update then that's just filtering through from race direction. Initially, the pit lane wasn't going to be open before 15:45 local time. It's now 15:36. That's been pushed back by a further 15 minutes at least. The pit lane will not open before 4 p.m. local time now. So that's about another 24, 23 minutes away. As we say, we'll keep our fingers crossed that by that stage of proceedings, there will have been some break in this weather, and we will finally be helped to hear those 300 horsepower MotoGP bikes fire up and power around what will be a wet Mandalika circuit. But let's hope that these fans get what they've come to see. This man fighting hard to retain his MotoGP World Championship crown.
Fabio Quartararo's changed into his civvies, so he's not expecting a restart anytime soon. Of course, he's got half an hour to play with as the Indonesian fans start to show us some of the moves. Whether that's a dance move or whether he's simulating twisting the throttle of a motorcycle, I'm not entirely sure, but either way, some quality dad dancing to fill your time, and it's certainly entertaining. Fabio Quartararo, I'm not sure whether he's going to engage in a dance-off with this guy. He is a little bit. He's showing some of his own moves.
Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Fabio loving it. We're certainly loving it. That's going to help ease the tension and ease the stress that will inevitably going around it. Yeah, you're famous. You've had your moment in the spotlight here in Mandalika. He's got some moves, that guy, hasn't he? There's nothing going to dampen the enthusiasm of that
He's
man
laying
there
down the gauntlet,
in
isn't
the
he?
blue T-shirt. Can we have a dance-off, please, between that man in the crowd
Come on,
and
Fabio
Quartararo? Come on, let's have a Strictly Come Dancing show getting underway here in Mandalika. How come it's taken us so long to find this guy? Absolutely brilliant, loving it. We've loved life in Lombard. Yeah, come on, let's keep going. Superb. Fabio Quartararo, he absolutely loved it. Come on, Fabio, we need to see your moves. We know you've got great moves out on circuit. Let's see some off-track swagger. Come on, we know you've got it. We know you've got those moves in you. Oh, he's not going to do it, is he?
Maybe we'll see them on the podium later on. Maybe if he ends up there.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe he's a little bit too frightened of being shown up by the guy in the crowd. Some refreshments being taken on board by our round one winner, Enea Bastianini. Is he going to get the chance to add to his 25 points already collected in Doha? There is the story, unfortunately, of the afternoon here in Mandalika. We did get a Moto3 Grand Prix, we did get a shortened Moto2 Grand Prix, and then just towards the back end of that Moto2 race, actually there was a few rain spots, wasn't there, in that Moto2 battle. You could just sense that those grey ominous clouds that had started to close in on us, they were going to have an impact on the start of this MotoGP race, and unfortunately that is exactly how it materialised, how it panned out. So that's the latest info that we have. Bang up to date on your screens there at the bottom of your picture. The pit lane will not open before 4 p.m. local time. You can just see there in the foreground Alex Crivier working, of course, now with DAZN, Spanish TV. Having a chat with Ernest Rivas, of course, the famous Spanish TV commentator. I think Alex Crivier, actually, if my very hazy memory serves me right now, getting a bit fuzzy in my old age, he was on the podium the last time we had a Premier Class race here in Indonesia. I think it was an all Repsol Honda podium. Yeah, in Sentul. The race was won by Tadayuki Okada from Mick Doohan, with Alex Crivier in third place. So Alex Crivier knows what it takes to get a podium finish around in this part of the world. Finally, better late than never, at least we've got a MotoGP bike engine fired up in pit lane. Let's hope that bike is going to get ridden in anger at some stage. We're 20 minutes away from the next update. Pit lane will not open before 4 p.m. local time.
Well, you can see everyone obviously huddled up under the shelter. They've been using that shelter all weekend to really keep themselves out of the sunlight and keep themselves in the shade through practice. Me and our colleague Matt Dunn walked down pit lane on Thursday lunchtime, and they had fans outside all the pit boxes to try and keep everybody cool. It's certainly been the heat that's been the main challenge provided by the weather this weekend. Of course, that was the cause of the initial delay or the initial shortening of the race distance. Let's head down into pit lane. We've already seen a very relaxed Fabio Quartararo down in pit lane, enjoying some of the scenes in the grandstands. Let's hear the words from his team boss, Maio Meregali. He's with side.
Maio, this must be heartbreaking for you, you know, seeing the rider, your rider, come through practice qualifying as the favourite, really, and especially in my eyes, I really thought he was the man to beat. The only one looking like on rails here when everyone else is struggling, and now it's rained and changed everything. Please give us your thoughts.
Yeah, it's a really pity. We are, as you can imagine, disappointed also because we did a 3-day test here 4 weeks ago. We did a really good job. We prepared this race in the best way as possible. We started very well. Morbidelli, for me, he could also start from the first row without a crash yet in qualify. Now, basically, we throw away all the data we gather in 5 days, basically. But I'm really now doubting if we can start, because apparently the tarmac doesn't drain. There is a lot of water, so I don't know until when we will be able to postpone the start of the race.
Getting back to Morbidelli, I was really happy to see the old Franco flashes of him come back. From inside the box, do you feel he's back on track?
Yeah, definitely. He's very happy now. Every time he wants to push, he's fast. He got back the confidence, the speed. Even in Qatar, for me, he looked much better compared to the winter test, and here even more. It's for sure a good and important point for us, because now we can really compare the two rider data during the race weekend, and as you know, one can push the other one, and that's our aim.
Maio, thank you for your time, and I hope you get to go racing.
Me too.
Yeah, thanks to Simon, thanks to Monster Energy Yamaha team manager Maio Meregali. It was a real tough start, wasn't it, for the factory Yamaha team, Yamaha in general, a couple of weeks ago over in Qatar. Fabio Quartararo, what a difference a couple of weeks can make. It kind of just shows the unpredictable nature of this year's World Championship. The world champion struggling, 9th place and over 10.5 seconds back of this man in Qatar. Yet he comes to a brand new circuit here in Mandalika and has kind of the least of all problems with this new harder case in Michelin rear tyre. He was looking forward to making the soft rear work in dry conditions, which unfortunately we are not going to get, of course, because even if the rain stops, it's not going to dry up sufficiently quickly enough for a dry Indonesian Grand Prix. That sort of expression there, the raised eyebrows from Malaysia Spargaro's crew chief Antonio Jimenez there, the body language as well, hand on hips, kind of sums up where we're at, really, unfortunately, here in Indonesia. Everybody just playing the waiting game and looking skywards and keeping close eyes on the weather radars, the weather technology. Can we glean anything from that little map there as we again look at all the local dignitaries? I really do hope that we can get some MotoGP race action in here, because it would be the perfect way to end what's been such a brilliant weekend all round. As Lewis touched upon, we had a fantastic welcome when we first arrived here in Jakarta, the parade of 20 riders with President Mr. Widodo. It was like rock stars, wasn't it? And this was all part of what we hoped was going to be a really special grid ceremony to kick off the Indonesian Grand Prix. We saw the special grid ceremony for the first time precede the Qatar Grand Prix a couple of weeks ago. It was a real nice new feature. Even though they can't go on the grid and they can't perform out on the circuit, well, the band are still going to play the Indonesian national anthem, so myself and Lewis will just pause for a couple of moments. Well, you've got to give credit to the Indonesian authorities here. They're doing everything they possibly can to keep the patient fans, the expectant fans, entertained and occupied as we continue to have this unfortunate rain delay here. The race, of course, should have been over by now. Unfortunately, we're still waiting. We'll take another quick breathe as well and soak up what hopefully is the pre-race atmosphere of this marching band.
Aku berdiri jadi pandu ibuku, Indonesia kebangsaanku, bangsa dan tanah airku. Marilah kita berseru, Indonesia bersatu. Hiduplah tanahku, hiduplah negeriku, bangsaku, rakyatku semuanya. Bangunlah jiwanya, bangunlah badannya untuk Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, tanahku, negeriku yang ku cinta. Indonesia Raya, merdeka, merdeka, hiduplah Indonesia Raya.
A rousing and fantastic rendition of the Indonesian national anthem. Some positive news to bring you as well. It looks like the rain just has started to ease off. Sure, that made the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, didn't it? The band there playing in front of the president, Mr. Joko Widodo. The fans putting their heart and soul into that national anthem as well. What a picture that is. Great scenes here. That's why we are so desperate to give these fans the show that they came for, the show that they have been waiting for 25 years. We're 10 minutes away from what we hope will be the pit lane opening.
And this is the reason why we have the new 15-minute start procedure in place, the shorter start procedure, is if there is a window in the weather where it does ease off, they want to make the most of it, because of course there's every chance if it does ease off that the rain could intensify once again later on. So a sensible application of the rules, where if we do get a little bit of a gap in the weather where we can get a race, and it's important to capitalise on it as soon as we can.
The fans there getting the pictures that they'll cherish for many a year to come. Hopefully they'll get some pictures of MotoGP bikes being ridden in anger around this Mandalika circuit. There has been a little bit of a break in the torrential rain. Let's hope those clouds can clear off and we can get some race action coming up. We can hear a few MotoGP bikes just being warmed up in the pit lane. That's got the fans cheering, and this will hopefully get us all cheering, because the new schedule has just been released. There you can see on your screens, pit lane will open as we'd anticipated and as we'd hoped at 4 p.m. local time for a race start at 4:15 local time, so about 75 minutes after we'd hoped to have the Grand Prix of Indonesia underway here in Mandalika. But let's hope that finally this easing of the rain means that we will get this much anticipated, this much expected and much hyped Grand Prix of Indonesia here in Lombok.
Fabio Quartararo will be rushing off to change back into his leathers, of course, having enjoyed the dance-off that was taking place in the grandstands. Of course, much like you guys back at home, I'm sure you all much rather watch motorcycles go on the racetrack and hear us talk over them. But yeah, we hopefully will be only just under 25 minutes away from the race getting underway. Pit lane then due to open in just over 8 minutes time, and that has got the crowd up on their feet.
Yeah, the local circuit announcer just confirming the news that we have just brought you sitting at home. We thank you for your patience wherever you are in the world. We know some of you, particularly in Europe, have had a pretty early start to watch the race action. Hope you've got some strong coffee on board and you can now enjoy what will be, of course, a shortened 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. You can just still see there on that camera shot, looking at that spectacular Lombok coastline. A bit of rain still falling, but nothing like what we had about a couple of hours ago almost now.
Yeah, the rain started to really get heavy around 20 minutes or so maybe following the end of the Moto2 race, which in itself had been shortened. So the riders in that race will certainly have been pleased that that race got shortened, which was due to the track conditions, not due to the rain. It was more due to the very hot temperatures that we've got here, where they decided to shorten the race. That rain could have come just around the end of the Moto2 race had that run to its full distance. So they will have certainly been relieved on that score.
Well, we have waited 25 years for MotoGP action in Indonesia, and we're about 25 minutes away now, hopefully, from the start of the Grand Prix of Indonesia at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit. You can see there Loris Capirossi and Franco Ancini. They've had a very, very busy afternoon. They're doing everything they possibly can to try and clear off any standing water that might still cause a problem. You can see in those puddles there, the rain is still falling, but it has eased off. Trust us, ladies and gentlemen, the organisation, both in MotoGP and here in Mandalika, they're doing everything they possibly can to make sure that this race does get underway at our new scheduled time, 4:15 local time.
So perhaps we can call that part of the race at the shallow end, can we, of this Pertamina Mandalika circuit. Yeah, they've been working right throughout this delay, as I mentioned. It was important to them that when the weather did break and an opportunity to get a racing did take place, that the track was immediately in a condition that they could get racing as soon as possible. We have seen, and you can see a little bit there as well, back on Saturday morning when we went out for free practice 3 in Moto 3, we saw Elia Bartolini have a really big high side out into the gravel chaps, and the gravel chaps were absolutely flooded here. So hopefully they've been keeping an eye on that as well to make sure that there aren't too many puddles that the riders could fall into.
If in doubt, get the brushes out. We've just had the Winter Olympics. We might have some candidates for the Great Britain curling team here, or an Indonesian curling team indeed, in the future. We've got the brooms, we've got the brushes, we've got the road sweepers doing everything we can then to get the race underway in, what is it now, 15:54 local time. So in just over 20 minutes time, we should be good to go, all being well here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit. As Loris Capirossi and Franco Ancini and other Dorna representatives make sure that every aspect, every potential problem corner with standing water is cleared before the riders do head out on the circuit.
So who will see this as a big opportunity then, a wet race in MotoGP? The likes of Pol Espargaro perhaps starting down in 15th on the grid for Repsol Honda. Of course, he took his first MotoGP podium in very torrential wet conditions in Valencia. He will certainly see this as a big opportunity. Brad Binder, we've mentioned, of course, he's very, very good in his conditions as well. John Zarco, Jack Miller on the Ducatis will see as an opportunity. The big question, I suppose, will be Fabio Quartararo from pole position. Just how much has his wet weather riding come on since we last saw him at the end of last season?
So finally, we are getting the MotoGP riders and teams prepped and ready to go. They're bringing all the equipment onto the track now. We are going to start the quick start procedure. The pit lane will open very, very shortly. Thankfully, the teams are getting braced for this Grand Prix of Indonesia. Suzuki, Redding, Alex Rins. Let's quickly pop down for an update on the current conditions from Simon down in pit lane.
I'm only interrupting because, guys, it really has stopped. Like, I'm standing out here with no jacket, no umbrella, and it's almost nothing coming down now, so I think we're in luck.
Great news, Simon. Thank you very much indeed for that. Pit lane opens then in just over 4 minutes' time, and you can also see, just to underline Simon's point, a number of the spectators in the exposed seats at the front of the grandstands have removed their rain jackets and their Macs that were keeping them dry in the torrential conditions that we had for the last couple of hours. So all being well, we'll be off and underway with the first Indonesian Grand Prix in the Premier class for 25 years. The race due to get underway in just under 20 minutes time. Fabio Quartararo will line up from pole position then. Let's just run you quickly through the grid that will be lining up shortly. Martin and Zarco for Pramac. There is Jorge Martin, second on the grid. starts from the middle of the front row. Brad Binder heads row 2 ahead of Bastianini, the World Championship leader, and Pecco Bagnaia. Oliveira, Rins and Miller there on row 3 ahead of Aleix Espargaro, Fabio Di Gianantonio, the top rookie, and Luca Marini. Marco Bezzecchi starts 13th ahead of Franco Morbidelli, who did receive a 3-place grid penalty for an infraction during the practice start session at the end of FP3 yesterday. That dropped into 15th. He's now been promoted back up to 14th because Marc Marquez, unfortunately, who a number of those fans came to see, will not be starting this Indonesian Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in a violent high side during the warm-up session this morning. That promotes his teammate Pol Espargaro up onto the 5th row in 15th, with Andrea Dovizioso, who's certainly got some previous in wet conditions, hasn't he? He lines up 16th ahead of Joan Mir and Alex Marquez. Maverick Vinales would be 19th on the grid ahead of the 2 Tech 3 rookies of Raul Fernandez and Remy Gardner. Darren Binder is set to start 22nd, with Takaki Nakagami in 23rd. They're all, of course, chasing Fabio Quartararo, who starts from pole position.
Yeah, just actually quickly popped out of our commentary box and saw on the back of a scooter going to the Repsol Honda office was Marc Marquez. Quite a big plaster, it looks like he got on the right elbow. If that's all he got away with after that monster high side at turn 7 in this morning's warm-up, he's a very, very lucky boy. Of course, the 8 times world champion. Sadly, not a participant in this shortened 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. After that big spill this morning in the warm-up session, we wish Mark well and hope he's back in action, fighting fit and ready to go when we make our first trip to South America since 2019. The Termas de Rio Hondo circuit primed and ready for action there in 2 weeks' time.
So 90 seconds then until the bikes will head out onto the racetrack, and of course the riders wouldn't ordinarily push too hard on a sighting lap, but you can imagine the riders will be very, very keen when they head out there to get a real idea of what the grip levels are like. Of course, they'll do 1 lap to the grid, and then within 15 minutes of the pit lane opening, we will be off and running with the warm-up lap in this 20-lap Indonesian Grand Prix. Joan Mir, boy, has he got some work to do, starting 17th on the grid, although he hasn't felt happy or comfortable at any stage, really, in the dry conditions this weekend. So perhaps a wet Grand Prix might present him with an opportunity to paper over some of the cracks of what has been a really desperate weekend for the 2020 world champion.
You know, although he's been in MotoGP a couple of years, hasn't he, Joan Mir? Likewise, Fabio Quartararo. They don't have an awful lot of wet weather experience. This is a journey into the unknown as well for the rookies, the likes of Marco Bezzecchi, Fabio Di Gianantonio, Remy Gardner, Darren Binder as well. They'd have never raced a MotoGP bike in rain conditions. So Fabio Quartararo, for the first time in 9 long months. Can't believe we're saying that. He was always the qualifying king of MotoGP, wasn't he, the Frenchman? But he is going to start from pole position in this 20-lap Grand Prix. The number 20 flags waving proud in the Mandalika grandstands.
Just listen to the roar. This is what the crowd have been waiting for a good couple of hours now, since the Moto2 race came to a conclusion with spots of rain in the air. They've seen plenty of rainfall since then. The green flag waves, and João Zarco leads the field out for this sighting lap. They'll do 1 lap to the grid, and then at 15 minutes past the hour, the Indonesian Grand Prix will be underway. World champion Fabio Quartararo starts from pole position. Just how much has his wet weather riding come on since last season? Of course, it was his difficulties in the wet conditions and mixed conditions that saw him start the Grand Prix that eventually concluded with him as world champion back at the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix last year from 15th on the grid. Can he put those problems behind him and give his world championship defence the kickstart that it needs?
This is a massive step into the unknown for these MotoGP riders. They've done barely a handful of wet weather laps. Certainly the track wasn't as wet as this on Saturday morning. So this really is stepping into the unknown territory. Who's going to quickly master the conditions? Who's going to take the big risks? Jack Miller, well, you know that he's so good in the wet conditions. He's proven to be strong on the Ducati and the Honda in the past. Of course, it was mixed conditions, and he took that famous win at the Dutch TT in Assen back in 2016. Who else has got really strong wet weather prowess in this field? Frankie Morbidelli's actually not a bad wet weather rider. Other guys with nothing to lose really, Andrea Dovizioso in particular on a factory Ducati, where you can always put your money on him to be a big threat in these rain conditions. You've got to say, the way that Fabio Quartararo thrown that Yamaha around that second sector, there's been a lot of feedback from the World Superbike riders here and the Moto3 riders who had a couple of wet sessions that the grip levels here in the rain at this Mandalika circuit are very, very good. Very, very good indeed. So you can see the guys are just out there now trying to understand where the patches of water are, where the water's perhaps at its worst, and then also just work out the grip levels. Pecco Bagnaia also relatively inexperienced in terms of wet weather riding in MotoGP as well.
Alex Rins is a rider I'd perhaps point to as well, who might have half a chance in these conditions. He starts in the middle of the third row in 8th place. Pit lane closes in 4 minutes time, which is why you're seeing riders come back down pit lane. They do have time to do this. This isn't like the quick restart procedure where you have 60 seconds to get out there before the pit lane closes again. So understandably, some of the smart cookies on this grid, the 2 Pramac riders, the 2 Suzuki riders, taking the opportunity to do an extra lap of the track before they pull up on the grid, just to get a little bit more information, just to see where some of the damper patches are, where some of the grip levels are. KTM, of course, they'll fancy their chances this afternoon. Brad Binder, last time we saw conditions like this, was winning a race on slicks. Of course, he won't be running them today. Miguel Oliveira also looking good. He starts 7th on the grid. Their team boss, Francesco Guidotti, is speaking now with Simon.
Francesco, we now step into the unknown. I'd love to know how your riders go into this race, how they've been feeling in the box, and we do know how in the unknown Brad often pulls out something special. What are your thoughts?
Difficult to have an opinion, difficult to predict something. We never raced here before, and the conditions are completely different than the test and the practice for the weekend. So yeah, let's start and we'll see. But the guys are in a good mood. Both of them usually perform well in the wet condition. So yeah, finger crossed and let's go.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to Francesco Guidotti. Great start, as Lewis said, for the KTM team in Doha. Brad Binder, his 3rd podium finish in the Premier class. I wonder if he's going to be tempted to go out on slick tyres. Joking, of course. That was, of course, his brilliant victory at the Red Bull Ring in the Austrian Grand Prix last year. So finally, we are getting the grid forming here at the Pertamina Mandalika circuit in Indonesia. Pramac Ducati await their man, Jorge Martin and Johan Zarco, both going from the front row of the grid. Brad Binder. There's going to be some nerve jangling now because, as we mentioned, we can't overemphasise, this is a complete blank canvas, a complete journey into the unknown for these guys. They've never raced before here in Mandalika. They've certainly got very little experience of wet weather conditions. In some respects, it might be a bit of a lottery, but it's certainly going to provide some nail-biting entertainment. We hope you have stuck with us over the last hour and a half or so when our coverage for MotoGP started. I'm sure you have. Why would you go anywhere? It's the greatest motorsport show on earth as we look at Enea Bastianini starting from the middle of that 2nd row. Binder and Bastianini, Lewis, in the dry, you really fancy them to be strong given they've excelled in the Doha from really good qualifying performances. Let's quickly pop down to the grid again. Piero Taramasso and Michelin, they've been thrown an 11th hour curveball, haven't they, by these tricky conditions? Simon's with the Michelin Motorsport manager, Piero Taramasso.
Yes, Piero, some new conditions for you to make the weekend even tougher. Can you tell us what tyres the riders will go for?
Yeah, in this condition, the choice is medium front and medium rear. This is the one because the track temperature is still quite high, is around 25, 26 degrees. And also because here, the tricky point is the overheating on the right side. With the soft compound, the problem that you might overheat too much, you lose grip. With the medium, will be much more stable. So this is the best choice for this condition.
Thank you, Piero.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thanks to Piero Taramasso. We're just running through this revised grid now, of course, revised, sadly, because 8 times world champion Marc Marquez has been ruled out of this delayed Indonesian Grand Prix. There is the president then, Mr. Joko Widodo, who is finally, after all of his effort and all the effort of the authorities here in Indonesia, it looks like, thankfully, we are going to get MotoGP action here in Indonesia for the first time since 1997.
Well, the Shaman certainly did the trick in the end. We got the race we were hoping for.
Yeah, whatever that lady's name was, get her inducted into the MotoGP Hall of Fame very, very quickly, because, yes, it does look like the Rain Banisher, or whatever she was called by the locals. She normally goes to big events like weddings and parties.
She'll be getting a position at the FIM, I think. She'll be taken to every Grand Prix over the course of the year now to try and ward off any potential wet races or cancellations. So we're about to get underway then for this Indonesian Grand Prix, and Enea Bastianini goes into it as the championship leader. Let's get a word from Grassini with Simon.
Yeah, that was a key word you said there, championship leader. That's why I've come to see Michele Massini. Michele, he's done so well, Enea, you know, for the first race, all the way through this event, put himself in a good position on the grid, looked good in FP4. Now, completely different conditions. How does he feel about the wet?
Yeah, now it's difficult to predict how does it go the race, because still a lot of water on track. There is a big patch in some corner, but for sure this is the same condition for everybody, and we don't make any practice on this condition. So we will see. We start from the second row. This is good enough, but we have to learn lap by lap what we can do.
How does Enea feel about rain condition riding?
Not so bad. Not so bad. We have to improve in this point, but we have a good base on the rain.
Thank you and best of luck.
Thank you to you. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Simon. Thanks to Michele Massini from the Grassini Ducati team. Can they continue their stellar start to 2022? Alex Rins, not quite sure that it's sunglasses weather right now for the Suzuki man, but I guess just trying to keep himself focused, trying to hide some of the nerves that will inevitably be hitting these riders. This is nerve-wracking stuff. This is tense. This is where these guys are really, their skills are put to the limit, their concentration, their focus, because they're just about to encounter a racetrack in conditions that they've never experienced before. It's a bit of a level playing field, this, isn't it? It's going to be a case of fortune favouring the brave. Jack Miller, normally he revels in these kind of conditions. Even Thriller Miller looks a little bit pensive as we count down towards race time here in Mandalika.
Yeah, just 6 minutes to go then. Speaking, of course, earlier on, we were discussing the potential strategies that might be deployed in a dry weather race, and the big talking point, I suppose, was Fabio Quartararo's determination, I think, to get to the front of the race and get a clear track, with the Ducatis looking to stop him doing so. In many ways, even though it's a wet race, that is still the aim for Fabio Quartararo, more because of the visibility here rather than any kind of issues with overheating front tyres. We're still expecting to see a little bit of spray, more than a little bit of spray. There will still be some standing water in patches of this racetrack. We've already heard from Piero Taramasso that there are still some patches as the virtual fan wall. Get ready to see this historic first Indonesian Grand Prix in 25 years. If we are going to see some spray, particularly in the early laps with the field all running together, it's going to be so important for these guys to try and get a clear track as soon as possible.
Yeah, Fabio Quartararo would not have known how perhaps significant that pole position was yesterday. He knew it was going to be good and crucial in dry conditions. Well, it might be absolutely vital now with, as Lewis said, the potential for spray hitting the riders that are in the chasing pack. An excellent weekend so far then for this young man, Fabio Di Gianantonio. Very, very limited experience of that Ducati in rain conditions. This is going to be a tough test of the mettle for these MotoGP riders. 5 minutes then to the race start here in Mandalika, and finally we can say there's going to be MotoGP race action in Indonesia. Our first visit to Southeast Asia since 2019.
One rider perhaps to identify that we haven't mentioned yet, who will certainly fancy his chances in these conditions. Starts all the way back in 18th on the grid. The brother of this man, Marc Marquez, if you're just joining us, will not start this Grand Prix due to a concussion sustained in the warm-up earlier on today, as some drizzle starts to fall, as Simon Crafar lets us know from pit lane. But Alex Marquez, his brother, of course, took a sensational podium, his first podium in MotoGP in very wet conditions at Le Mans, and very nearly won that Grand Prix as he was chasing down Danilo Petrucci. He'll certainly be a rider who will have a big result on his hands potentially today, certainly a bigger result than he thought when he qualified 18th yesterday.
Let's just hope then that that rain that's just starting to fall a little bit heavier again as the team personnel are told to clear the grid, that it doesn't start falling as ferocious as what it did about an hour ago, which caused this lengthy delay here for the MotoGP return to Indonesia for the first time since 1997. Understandably, some really tense, anxious-looking faces down there on the grid. Somebody give Aleix Espargaro a glass of water. He looked like he got a real dry mouth. So here it is then, finally, we're about to get underway in MotoGP here in Indonesia. Two Pramac Ducatis on the front row of the grid. Johann Zarco in third place. Jorge Martin starts from second place. But it's the reigning world champion Fabio Quartararo who starts from pole position in our first Indonesian Grand Prix in 25 long years. Don't go anywhere, folks. 20 laps of pure drama and theatre coming your way in MotoGP. Up next.
Who will be the reign master of Mandalika here in MotoGP? Fabio Quartararo, the reigning world champion, starts from pole position ahead of the Pramac Ducatis of Jorge Martin and Johann Zarco. Brad Binder heads the KTM Challenge from the front of the second row ahead of the reigning world championship leader, Enea Bastianini. Keep an eye out for the rookies. They're led by Fabio Di Gianantonio. He starts in the middle of row 4 with Marco Bezzecchi just behind him. Pol Espargaro on the 5th row. He is the sole Repsol Honda challenger in this Grand Prix due to the injury sustained by Marc Marquez earlier this morning. In wet conditions, with drizzle starting to fall once again, these are challenging conditions for the best riders in the world. Let's go racing in MotoGP.
So we've been waiting 72 minutes since we thought this Indonesian Grand Prix would be getting underway, and finally, as the rain just starts to fall, the warm-up lap then does